Hey, what's up, fam? It's Dr. Chanda, licensed clinical psychologist, podcaster, speaker, author, all the things. Listen, I am back with you for another season of Paging Dr. Chanda. I'm so excited to be bringing back this show, especially right now during Mental Health Awareness Month, and this week particularly because so much has been happening with mental health in pop culture. So I'm super excited to hop into it. I'm super excited to be back with you all. Y'all know how we do. Before any episode starts, I like to give you guys updates on what I've been up to. But life has been lifing. Things are very interesting right now as I'm preparing for a few transitions. I just came off of a contract that I did with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, and if you guys aren't familiar with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, it is a national organization where they focus on HBCU students or students who attend historically Black colleges and universities, as well as historically Black schools, community colleges, so schools in general. There are about 75 schools that they work with. And so a part of the contract was going to different cities and working with the students at their schools in order to help them learn different ways to reset and rewire the brain for success. It was phenomenal, and it ended last week, and I told them I just needed a little break just to get myself together, to get some rest, but it was a beautiful experience, and I'm so happy to have been there, and thank you so much to TMCF. Also, if you guys were tuned in, I was featured in Tamron Hall. So if you guys watched the episode from April 24th, a few weeks ago, you would have seen me on the couch with Tamron and the Tam fam. It was such an amazing experience, y'all. I think one of my favorite parts, of course, talking to Miss Tamron, but also the fact that when I had asked my team, my community, my friends, supporters in my life, if they were interested in coming, I really did not expect a whole lot of people to come to New York because it's a little drive, a little train ride. It was a flight for some people, and my people in my tribe, they did not hesitate to come along. A lot of them were excited to come. They were excited to help. I had my best friend, Javon James, doing my styling. I had my godbrother, Courtney C.B. Willis, doing my hair. I actually have the way he styled the ponytail is the same style that I have in right now, except for he had a few pieces down. I just kind of wrapped those pieces around. So yeah, it was bomb. Oh, Joy did my content. One of my best friends, Alonda, her youngest sister, Elena, is a psychology student. And so she came to shadow for the day. She was actually helping. So she helped us being a day manager, which was really dope. And it was just a beautiful experience. So I'll probably talk about more of that later on in maybe a future episode. But I do hope that you guys get to check that out. And I'll likely link my appearance on Tamron Hall in the show description. So make sure that you guys check it out. And so, yeah, so that is what I've been up to. I would love to hear what you guys been up to. Feel free to shoot me an email, shoot me a comment in the comment section of YouTube, Facebook, if I air it on Facebook, or again, shoot me an email, admin@drshanda.org. Y'all know I love to stay connected with y'all. All right, so now that that's out the way, this is going to be a bit of a condensed episode because I really don't have a ton of time today. I'm just going to be completely honest with y'all, but I still want to connect with you. I still want to be able to talk to you. So first things first, and I'm the type of person, if I'm listening to a pod, I'm get to the point. I want to hear your thoughts on X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to do that for y'all today. All right, so first things first, y'all know we like to start off with Hot Off the Press. Hot Off the Press is our segment where we are focusing on pop culture in the news. So what is happening, what's real, what's tea, all the things, right? So whether it's mental health in the news or pop culture in the news. And so I really wanted to highlight this situation that's going on with the Met Gala. So as we know, the Met Gala occurred this week, I believe. And so the theme was art as fashion, I think it's art as fashion. I really didn't understand the theme too much, simply because that's the Met Gala overall. It's supposed to be wearable art, pretty much. Whatever theme last year was dandyism. I thought that was a really dope theme. this year being art as fashion, I think it's kind of redundant because the Met Gala is art as fashion. But anyway, I never get invited, so what do I know? But overall, our good sis Taraji P. Henson took to the internet and said, y'all, what are we doing, basically? Like, why are people showing up to the Met Gala? What is this? Because we know this was sponsored by billionaires and also people who are funding wars happening, campaigns that don't benefit our people, right? Campaigns that pretty much have us in a chokehold, whereas where our pockets are being hit, our education is being hit, our finances are being hit, voter suppression, DEI, like all of these things are being impacted. The funders of these different acts, these heinous, egregious acts that are happening in the political climate today are the same people who have funded the Met Gala. And yet we are going and prancing around in our fine gowns and taking pictures with people just to be seen, because that's essentially what it is. And so I love the fact that Taraji P. Henson stood up and she she's no stranger to speaking her mind and calling out injustice when we need to see that happening. But I was kind of surprised at what some of the people were responding. And so basically a lot of people were saying, and I even saw this on The View. I think Whoopi Goldberg responded and was basically like, well, if people choose to, people can protest what they want to protest, but also we have to keep in mind, like, if we're going to protest the Met Gala, which was funded by Jeff Bezos, we have to also protest Amazon. We have to also protest like these things that we use, the everyday items that we tend to use. And when people say things like that, because y'all tried to say the same thing about Target, the Target protest, like Target isn't the only one that's targeting DEI. You need to cancel this subscription, that subscription. You need to not go to Walmart. You need to not go here. You need to not go there. I believe that y'all's responses are like that because you don't understand how protest works. You don't understand how boycotting works, right? So like, if we are frivolous in our protest or whatever, like, don't get me wrong. So I know I got some homies who were just like, no, I'm not supporting anything that any type of billionaire does. So I don't have a TV. I don't have a phone. I have a burner phone, or you can email me if you really need me. Like, I have friends who kind of like live off the grid pretty much, who, because they don't want to support these industries, these billionaires or whatever. But that's like a isolated group of people. The majority of us who, I need to get in contact with people at a particular time. Like, I'm going to have a cell phone, whether it's, iPhone, Android, whatever. Like, I can't just fall off the grid like that. Like, some of us find benefit in, like, we don't have access to a ton of grocery stores and communities, right? So oftentimes people's only access to grocery stores might be their local Walmart. Right. So it's not necessarily about, if you're going to protest one thing, you have to protest all, because that's not realistic for everybody. But the main idea that Taraji P. Henson was pointing to is that this is an event that we could have avoided. Right. We really, like, it's not like again, living in a food desert where I have to go to a Walmart in order to get my groceries versus I don't have to go to a Met Gala. That's just not a thing. And so when we tend to again, penalize people for the thoughts that they have regarding protest, boycotting, things of that nature, I think it really speaks to how far we have to come in order to fully understand why, the types of protests are different types of protests that are beneficial, and why it's important to have the Taraji P. Hensons and Miss Jennifer Lewis, like these types of individuals who can stand up and say, no, this is still wrong. So I was just really taken aback by that. So I'm going to pause here. I told you I didn't really have a ton of time today. And I'll be right back after I come back from this meeting. All right, y'all. I'll let y'all know how the meeting goes too. All right, so I am back. Thank you for your patience. And the meeting went well. One thing that people don't tell you about entrepreneurship before you go into entrepreneurship is about 80% of the work that we do is like pitching. We are constantly pitching. So I always have meetings lined up on my calendar. I always pray before going into them. And I'm just always grateful when I leave out with, and it feels promising. So appreciative. And yeah, that was actually a meeting for one of the partnerships or curriculum development that I plan to do with an organization. So this is more so like organizational change. I love to work on multi-systemic levels. So whether that's through individually in private practice or multi-organizationally through systems. So I'm appreciative of the roles that I have. and the anointing that the good Lord gave me. But back to the show. Thanks for your patience. Listen, I want to get into today's topic. So we talked about the hot off the press segment. So that was more so related to Ms. Taraji P. Henson. Now we are transitioning. We are transitioning to be licensed or unlicensed. That is the question. Who do we trust with our mental health? I'm so glad that y'all asked, because that is something we are addressing today. Now, for those of you who may have been living under a rock, I need you all to understand that we are not addressing this because we want to be academic elitists or professional. So we are not, our job is not to be academic or professional elitists. That is not the case. That is not the point of what the original video, why it was made. So it really was made to bring awareness to some of the harmful dialect that was taking place, that was distributed to the masses. And when information is disseminated publicly to millions of people, we have a responsibility as professionals in order to correct that. So I'm grateful, so grateful for my good sis doing that. And I'll get into her in a bit. But again, credentialing is not for gatekeeping. We are not doing this to gatekeep. We are not doing this to be elitist or whatever. It is more so to protect you. So what happened? Here are the facts, right? So on the Joe Budden podcast, Dr. Cheyenne Bryant explained that she does not identify as a therapist, even though she has identified as a therapist several times in that interview and interviews before, but I digress, and therefore does not require licensing, which is true. If you are not a therapist, you don't really need a license to be a coach, right? Emphasizing that her platform describes her as a psychology expert and life coach. Life coach, I'm familiar with that term. Psychology expert, that's pretty much made up, but that's neither here nor there. She maintained the life coaching does not fall under the same regulatory standards as clinical mental health professionals, which is also true. Bryant explained that she no longer practices under a license and works fully in private practice, saying insurance-based therapy requires diagnosis and strict timelines, which it does. So she stepping outside of the system allows her to charge out of pocket and have more control over how she works with clients. And I addressed this on social media, as well as several other people. You can be very much licensed, very much a psychologist who's quote unquote in the system or again, licensed and a part of a regulatory body or whatever, and charge out of pocket. So I told y'all, like when I first started my private practice, I was 100% out of pocket. I did not accept any type of insurance simply because insurance companies, they're very hard to work with, and each client has to have a diagnosis in order for their insurance to cover it. A lot of people are not comfortable with that, especially when we are talking about a vulnerable population, a population of people where we have been a history of being misdiagnosed and underdiagnosed. Why would I want a random diagnosis assigned to me simply to have my insurance cover it, right? So I'm saying that's the thought process of a lot of people of color and Black people. And so, but I say all that to say that claim is not true. So she made several egregious statements on this platform. She let's see. All right. So in response to this, my good sis, Dr. Raquel Martin, she postulated that she made a video, first of all, and created the social media firestorm that only she could create. Oh my God. So she's been going viral over the past few weeks, basically debunking the things that Cheyenne Bryant said regarding licensure, saying that this is not something that we only pursue in order to get licensed. However, this is something that we pursue in order to protect our patients. And in addition to that, the things that Dr. Bryant says, that is harmful to the Black community. So Dr. Martin's take is that the things that she's saying, which she's, you proclaim to care a lot about the Black community, and also this is harmful. So, there's a lot of people who might feel their way about how Dr. Martin approached it. I didn't see an issue with it. I think that she did a great job of kind of breaking down what licenses are for, what to look for when you're looking for a mental health professional, right? So background, your degree, your licensure is what she brought up. So all the things, right? And so again, this created such a huge firestorm on social media that everybody is talking about it. People are talking about, okay, so if we are supposed to be looking at these things, like, is my therapist supposed to be licensed? Are they supposed to be unlicensed? Let's talk about it today. So really quickly, the main thing that I want us to highlight is, what is the difference between a coach versus a mental health professional, a licensed mental health professional? I'm a firm believer, this is a hill I am willing to die on. Once there's a diagnosis associated, you should be seeing a licensed therapist, because there are so many things that can go wrong when we are attempting to treat diagnoses without utilizing evidence-based practices or practices that have at least been researched for that specific population and implementing those specific treatments or whatever in therapies in order for the overall betterment of that client, right? So one study it wasn't a study, it was an article that I highlighted on social media was SZA. SZA came out, I want to say last year or the year before, and she said she went to see a professional. She did not get better. She found out she was actually seeing a life coach, and that life coach just kept telling her to practice deep breathing, but her anxiety was not getting better. That is actually a perfect example as to why an individual would need to understand the type of license and the type of profession that person has before seeking treatment, right? If I know that as a psychologist, deep breathing can be very helpful, right? So when you are experiencing physiological symptoms, you want to have a physiological coping skill, deep breathing can help with anxiety. If it is not helping that client, it is important for us to assess. And a part of the training of a licensed psychologist or a clinical therapist is to understand the different ways that anxiety shows up, whether that is cognitive, behaviorally, psychologically, physiologically, right? And so if we are addressing it using physiological tools to address things that are actually cognitive or behavioral, of course your client isn't going to feel better. That is one of the reasons why the specific training is important, and why it's also important to have a license when working with diagnoses. Because if indeed SZA felt as though she was, and she didn't say this in the post, but if she felt as though she was being harmed by the treatment, or she felt as though what she experienced was not helpful or beneficial, or she felt as though the coach was being unethical in some way, where do you report the coach? Like, where does that report go to? Who is governing the coach? And that is essentially because there is no regulatory body that oversees coaches, right? So that oversees life coaches. Now, granted, to become a life coach, you can wake up tomorrow and say, I'm a life coach of individuals who want to overcome divorce or whatever. You don't need a certificate for that. You don't. Some people pursue certificates, but it's not necessary. You don't need a degree for that. You don't need a license for that. You could just wake up and start posting content and get your clientele together, right? However, what does that do to the client? What does that do to an individual who may not be able to afford therapy, but they think they're actually going to a therapist? That's why it's important, whatever profession that you're in, to tell your client, what is your background? What licenses you have? Anytime I'm meeting with someone for the first time, y'all coming in for that free 15-minute consultation. Hello, my name is Dr. Chanda. I am a licensed clinical psychologist, right? I am letting you know my background, my credentials, so that you can make an informed decision as to whether or not you want to see me. Because at the end of the day, this is going to be collaborative, beloved. But one of the things that I also talked about on social media is people think that when you're helping another individual or when you're doing therapy, you're just asking questions and it's just a matter of like, let's just talk it out. And that's the work. That is not the work of a true therapist. A true clinical psychologist knows how to conceptualize cases. We know how to treatment plan. We know how to pull upon different therapeutic modalities that will be helpful for one client. I can have 5 clients in one day all show up with anxiety, but I might not be using the same modality for that person. Why? Because I am clinically trained to know what will more likely work with one person versus another. One person with anxiety, I might use specific CBT strategies. Another person with anxiety, I might focus more on the liberation psychology side of things. Another person with anxiety, their anxiety might be more so rooted in relationships. Then I will focus more on a dialectical behavioral therapy or DBT type of approach, right? So it's all based on your clinical training, but we are licensed to protect you all. We are licensed to be able to again, to have those ethical guidelines that we do abide by. So for instance, Dr. Bryant said, like, I'm a coach, I'm a life coach, and I don't want to get licensed because it restricts you. It does restrict you, and it should restrict you, because that's how we protect our clientele. I can't, so if I have a patient that's coming to see me, that person has some sort of notoriety and they want to invite me to their concert or to their basketball game or whatever, right? We're talking about, professional, like this person's a professional. I can't show up just because I want to be in the mix. I can't go to a graduation for my client just because I want to be around that person or because I'm proud of them, right? That is where ethics comes in. That's where ethical guidelines and boundaries come in. You don't have to abide by the same type of boundaries when you're not associated with any sort of like ethical guidelines or licensure, and there's no repercussions about it. So I think, again, Dr. Martin did an amazing job breaking down each of the categories. One thing I also included in, I responded to Dr. Bryant's videos explaining the differences in that. But I also, I highlighted the fact that there are some people who don't have a license, not because they're incompetent, but because they simply just, and that wasn't a response to Raquel. That was more so a response to the social media storm that happened, where people were saying like, oh, she's a fraud. She doesn't have a doctorate. She's not this, she's not that. And I was just kind of like saying like, no, like this, her not having a license doesn't mean she's incompetent, because she's still a doctor of psychology, if indeed she did get a doctorate, right? And that's no shade, but sometimes we get caught up in that and we don't understand, because like I have a lot of mentors who are just like, yeah, I'm not going through that process simply because it is inherently racist. And that's a whole nother video. The whole process of becoming a licensed psychologist, there is so many systemic barriers to that. And it's not a coincidence that only 5% of us who are psychologists are Black. That's not a coincidence, like at all. It's a lot of systemic barriers. It's a lot of financial barriers. It's a lot of barriers when it comes to testing and things of that nature. So that is another conversation for another time. I really hope that clears things up for you guys. And I want to leave off with some resources. So it is Mental Health Awareness Month. I want you guys to always be aware of ways that you can get free or reduced therapy services. So one, reaching out to the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation. So Boris L. Henson Foundation.org is the website, but it's called the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation. I've done a lot of work with them. They're amazing people with amazing resources. So you guys can reach out to them for a free community for the Black community, free therapy for the Black community. In addition to that, Therapy for Black Girls, so therapyforblackgirls.com. They actually have different directories where you can get services from a person of color or Black individual. We have BEAM, so the Black Emotional Mental Health Collective. We also have the Loveland Foundation. And so I recently referred somebody there because they provide therapy vouchers. So people who apply and their application is reviewed, you can be assigned a voucher to get free therapy. So you would go to whatever therapist you want and they would give you, I think the voucher amount is $150. What else? The crisis line, so 988. So if you are finding yourself in crisis, you can always call 988 if indeed you feel as though you need somebody to talk to or talk you through, or to send out mobile crisis to get you assessed to see if you would be a good fit for a higher level of care. All in all, I appreciate the dialogue that's happening on social media because it does bring about the difference between coaches and licensed professionals. There's great work that coaches do. There's great work that licensed professionals do. There's room for all of us to thrive, right? We are not in competition with one another, but it is important for us to be transparent about the credentials that we have and we don't have, and say what we can do versus what we cannot do, so that we are not harming our population. And for us, Black people experienced enough harm. Why would we want to be harming our own community? And so I'm grateful for, again, this conversation, grateful for Dr. Martin, grateful for even the Joe Budden podcast for bringing this to light, right? Bringing these conversations to light. So, all right, y'all, that was the end of the show. Don't forget, y'all, you have the power to create the emotions that you want to experience. I am Dr. Chanda. Make sure y'all tune in for another episode of Paging Dr. Chanda, and we'll talk soon. Bye.